Peter Liu. Peter, welcome to the podcast today,
Thank
man.
you.
Really excited to have you here.
Great to be here.
You've had an incredible career, and there are a lot of people who are very, very interested to know how you built your career, what it took to get where you are. I think every agent in St. Louis would love to be where you are right now and have built the team that you have and be closed as many deals as you are. So first of all, congratulations on building such an amazing career.
Thank you.
How did you get to where you are?
It really was a grind. Initially, we started 18 years ago, and I started on the commercial brokerage side.
Did you really?
I did.
Okay.
I did. And we were dealing mostly with multifamily and retail strip centers. And that's right when the market was kind of on the decline and tanking. And so a lot of my clients that were buying retail strip centers were saying, we can't keep these places full. What should we do? Can we start buying residential?
Yeah.
And that's when I said, that means I'm going to have to work on the weekends.
Yeah, right.
And so they said, we want you to be our guy. And so I started to deal mostly with a lot of residential foreclosures, short sales. And so that really was a grind in the beginning as well.
And who was it who are you working with that was asking you to kind of make that shift from commercial to residential? Because it's a big shift for a lot of people. I did that same shift. I was with Cushman Wakefield for a number of years and made it over to residential somehow.
So you know.
Very
it's not an easy transaction. But what happened was my dad had a food distribution company.
Okay.
And he had a lot of the restaurant owners asking, what are you investing in? And he started an investment group, and they were buying retail strip centers.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And at that time, everything was good. But as soon as the tenants started to leave and the mom and pop shops were closing down, we couldn't keep them full. And they would just tell me, hey, you need to figure this out. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know this was my problem, but I'll figure it out.
Right. Okay.
So we actually started to knock on all the doors up and down the streets and try to get those tenants to say, hey, when is your lease coming up? Can you move across the street? We'll give you a decent rate.
No kidding.
So we started to steal other tenants from other, strip malls.
Very smart.
And so that worked for a while, but then everybody still wanted to buy residential because they're like, no matter what, people will still need to rent. They'll still need to eat, And so food and shelter were top of the list.
And was that in St. Louis or was that somewhere else?
In St. Louis.
Okay. All right.
So
great.
My parents owned a company called Lucky Trading.
Okay.
They're still in operation today.
All right.
And we distributed food to most of the Chinese restaurants in like a 4-hour radius around St. Louis.
Okay. All right. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Incredible. So started working with your dad. How was it working with family?
It's this is on video, so it was
had some challenges, right?
It had some challenges. It was a good experience.
Yes.
I remember my mom saying, if you can handle working with your dad, you can handle anybody. It's kind of true.
All right.
I don't know if he's going to see this, but
there's going to be like 5 people to see this. Don't worry about it.
No concerns then. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I came from a background as well, working with family. So my family has a property management company doing homeowners association management.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a number of years with them. So understand the challenges, right, of working with family, the different dynamics. You come with baggage, I think. You know that if you and I were to go into business right now together, like we're not going to have the same kind of baggage that we're bringing to it, right? I don't have a lifetime of you picking on me when I'm a little kid, right?
True as that, yeah.
So you started in residential, you went into residential after the commercial. How was the first couple of years? You said it was a grind. Why was it so hard?
So, coming from my background in the food industry, a lot of those owners knew me as a hardworking, young, smart kid, kind of smart, maybe smart ass.
It's different kinds of smart, right?
So in many different ways. But, a lot of them were kind of expecting me to fail. They're like, this guy, he didn't grow up in that industry. Why should we use him when he's kind of the new kid on the block? What experience does he have?
Yeah.
He doesn't have that much wisdom, regarding real estate. And so a lot of cold calling, a lot of doors that shut in my face, a lot of people that said, we just don't need that right now. And then
Hmm.
a week later, you'd find that they bought something.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Tough
So
on the ego.
oh, I felt horrible. Uh, and, I was engaged to be married,
Okay.
and I went from high income to no income.
Mm.
And I was thinking, this is not going to end well.
Yeah, yeah.
And my mom would even call me. She was the one that
Your
gave me
mom
the
wouldn't call you?
idea.
Okay.
She said, "Oh, I just went to Vegas with one of our realtors. They were doing deals on their phone while they were
Mm-hmm.
playing blackjack.
Mm.
You could do that." And I was
Huh.
like, I could play blackjack and make money at the same time and do a deal.
Yeah, yeah.
But it didn't work out that easily.
Right,
And
right.
so she would ask me, "Are you going to be okay for this
Huh.
month?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm fine.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
worries.
Were you fine?
By the way, can you spot me this much mortgage?"
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Because I was so in debt.
Really?
So it was definitely difficult in the beginning.
Why didn't you quit?
Uh,
So many agents, I mean, 90% of agents are out in 3 years, right? Why did you stick with it?
it was the stubborn side of me that was thinking, I want to prove everybody wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it took about 2 years to really start getting a decent income so that I was staying out of the red.
Interesting.
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time to
It,
not be making money.
it felt like 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so 2 years, you're grinding, you're knocking on doors, you're calling people.
Mhm.
What was it that turned the corner for you? Like, what was it that got you over that hump?
I think eventually you started to establish yourself as being a guy that's honest, hardworking,
Mm-hmm.
straight shooter. And people started to kind of pass the word out.
Okay.
And that really helped.
Yeah.
No matter how much advertising you do or marketing, you still need those referrals to
Right.
really kind of gel.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, if I understand it correctly, too, I read an article about you from a couple of years ago.
Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. No, it was all good. It was all good. I promise.
Good.
And it indicated that one of your kind of methods to success, and in real estate, we talk about all these different methods that you can use to find success. You can farm. You can do. I mean, there's like an infinite number of things you can do and activities you can engage in.
Yep.
Right. And we talk about with our agents all the time, like, what are your pillars? You've got to focus in on the things that you're going to be spending your time and energy on. A shotgun approach usually does not work well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my understanding from reading this article is that you have really spent a lot of time and energy focusing on your referral business of past clients, right?
Absolutely.
They love you and they want to refer you to other people.
Yeah.
And you're doing obviously a good job of continuing to cultivate those relationships.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about that. How have you made such a great job in doing that? Like, what is it that you have been doing to create that success from referrals?
Well, obviously, you always want to be present, right?
Mm-hmm.
We do advertising to make sure that the name is out there and the brand is out there. But at the end of the day, I'll call clients every once in a while just to check up on them,
Mm-hmm.
see how they're doing. It's a small community over in St. Louis, so there's gossip, and sometimes you'll hear something happened, and then you'll follow up with them and say, "Hey, I heard something not so good happened. Is there anything I can help with?"
Okay.
But I think a lot of my clients at the end of the day, they're friends,
Mm-hmm.
and we care about each other, and the hope is that when they need something real estate related or even real estate adjacent,
Yeah.
you're their go-to guy.
Yeah. Right. Very interesting. So along the way, you must have encountered some challenges, some changes in the industry too. You came in at a very difficult time.
Yeah.
Kind of the recession, and
Yeah.
you clawed your way through that, and you made it to some success after 2 years. So what did your career look like then? So you're on your own, you're an independent. Now you have a team.
Right.
Back then, I imagine you're on your own, as most agents are, right?
Yeah.
They start out kind of, and it's an entrepreneurship business, right? So
it is.
You're on your own. You got to go out and make the work for yourself. So after those first 2 years, talk to me about your journey from that point forward.
So, you kind of just put your head down and work. A lot of my agents ask me, like, is there anything extra I should be doing?
Mm-hmm.
And really, I don't have any secrets to my success.
Okay.
I worked for 7 days a week for 11 years straight. And then
That's the secret.
that's the secret. Just to
Yeah.
have no extra outside life
Yeah.
and
give up
give up
everything.
everything, and you should be successful.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yes, yes.
But eventually my wife was like, hey, your kids are getting bigger. They
Mhm.
don't even know who you are half the time.
Okay.
So you should try to make some time.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when we were having kids, my wife was basically my first assistant, just helping out with
Okay.
paperwork. And I would be saying, hey, we need to do this now,
Yeah,
or else we're going to miss the boat. And then she would say, well, then you go change this diaper. And I'm like, but I'm still on the phone,
Right.
And that's when I hired my first assistant.
Okay.
And Lauren's been with us for 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
And
so your first assistant is still your assistant today.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. We're, I don't know how PC it is, but, we consider ourselves a small little family.
Yeah.
And we kind of look out for each other.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really neat. So you brought your wife into the business.
I did.
At some point, right?
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
I did.
All right. And she still works with you?
She does. And we're still married, too.
Amazing. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
15 years, 16 years, something like that, right?
It's 16 years.
16?
You're putting me on camera. I remember 16 years. Yeah.
Really? So what is it like working with your wife? Because I work with my wife too, right?
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, she was in education and we were growing and I needed the help, kind of like it sounds like you were at a point where you needed somebody to be helping with things.
Yeah.
So, she came on board, got her license, and there are days that she loves it. And there are days I think that she's like, what the heck did you get me into, Derek?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And unique challenges, right? Working with a spouse, working with family members.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
How did you do it? How do you make it work?
I hired an assistant. No, I'm just kidding. No, she still helps with a lot of the marketing, and she takes care of the books.
Yeah.
So we still work together, but maybe not side by side.
Sure.
And she'll give me her 2 cents and advice on what she thinks we should do, and
sure.
I'll listen. I might not always do it, but
Sure.
I always listen because you shouldn't feel like you know everything.
Right.
There's always potentially other ideas that might work better. So
Mhm.
she always, definitely gives me her 2 cents.
How important is it for you guys to have your own lanes that you're working in, or do you overlap on a lot of stuff?
It's pretty separate.
Okay.
And I think it just depends on the chemistry of how you work together. Me, I'm a little bit of a control freak. And you could call it micromanaging, you could call it quality control. But at the end of the day, it's like you said, we're entrepreneurs, and we need to make sure that the product we put out, the service we put out, it's consistent.
Right.
And so that's
at the end of the day, it's up to you to make sure your processes, procedures, everything is working correctly, right? You work in a big company, you're a cog in the wheel, and all the other stuff, a lot of times it doesn't matter. Somebody else's
responsibility. Yeah.
But you have to make sure that all your stuff on your team and with your business is running smoothly, because nobody else is going to catch it. Nobody else is going to do that. So you get a little lane on retentive, right? You get a little bit to the point where, like, yes, that little tiny thing, I need it done. I wasn't joking about that.
And I think, as a small business owner, there's no other way to do it.
Right.
Because, like you said, a big company will have all these different aspects that are working together. But as a small business owner, who's going to worry about all the ancillary stuff, and who's going to take responsibility for it?
Yeah.
And if it's your name on the sign, it's your problem.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
What's something that you know now that you wish you'd known that would have helped you get even further along in the process?
Ooh, God, we only have a half hour set. I would say in today's market, something that really seems helpful is a team environment. For somebody that's just starting out, I was kind of a solo agent. You work for a company, we won't name any names, but they're supposed to give you mentorship and guidance.
Yeah.
And it is what it is.
Doesn't always happen.
Everybody's busy doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of hanging there flapping in the wind thinking, what do I do next?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and so in the beginning, a lot of stuff, you know, we had to kind of figure out.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like my time, you know, putzing around in the beginning could have been expedited if I would have joined a team, had a guy that said, "Hey, this is how you start,"
Sure.
or you know, fed me some leads to start getting familiar with how to deal with people and how to
Right.
show houses even.
Right. Right.
Because, you know, I was walking around just like everybody else saying, it's a nice house, you should buy it, you know, and that
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you're more than Vanna White. You've got to
Yeah.
actually know some stuff. Yeah.
Behind door two.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, and the that only comes with deal volume and transactions, right? And
Yeah.
experience on those. And there's an infinite number of things to learn in real estate. I mean, I'm sure after all these years, you still learn things from day to day, right?
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
There's so much to learn. And
Yep.
so in the beginning, yeah, I can see where that would be valuable is to be with somebody that's got a lot of deal flow like you that can put a bunch of deals in front of you and you're going to learn a lot faster. So you think
Yeah.
that would have maybe sped up your trajectory if you had been on a bigger team earlier on?
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. It just wasn't prevalent back then, but I
Right.
think that's the direction a lot of things are going in.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I think there are some powers in number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Do you think it's difficult? One of the challenges that I've heard with teams is that if you're a team member and say you're a new agent starting out, it's extremely valuable in the very beginning, like the first year, 2 years, to get that deal transaction, the volume, get the exposure. But then to make that separation and go from team to being your own agent and being an individual, and maybe starting your own team at some point, that can be a difficult transaction because you're going from leads basically being fed to you, right, to having
Right.
to generate your own leads. Talk to us about that transition for agents that maybe have been on a team and they have dreams of kind of doing what you've done and starting their own team or going out on being their own. How do you do that successfully?
Well, you know, we've hired and fired quite a few agents over the
Yeah.
years. The good agents that get it, they'll stay. You know, and the thing is, I don't just have my buyer's agents only dealing with buyers
Ah,
because, you know, like in today's market, I mean, that's a
yeah.
grind.
Yes.
But I teach them how to deal with people in order to potentially generate more business,
Okay.
you know, to have every deal have more, you know, spin-offs.
Sure.
And you know, I tell them, you know, if there's a listing to be had, I want you to go after it.
Mm,
It'll go to you, you know,
that's great.
it'll be a minimal split, you know, and we try to be fair,
Yeah.
you know, and we're trying to provide, I guess, an environment and a shelter that makes sense for them.
Yeah.
Numbers wise, you know, that's, I think, the biggest thing because
Hmm.
everybody's in it to make a living. So if you're taking, you know, a lion's portion of the share,
Hmm.
nobody's going to stick with you very long, even though
Sure.
you're feeding them leads.
Sure.
But for the guys that get it, those leads, like I said, have, you know, more to it.
Sure.
And you get deeper into every deal and deeper into every relationship.
Sure.
And you start building up your own Rolodex or
Sure.
database.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and as long as those agents keep getting more experience too, and they keep learning and growing,
Mm-hmm.
then I think you're right. It does make sense. But I certainly have heard of teams that don't have your same approach. That
Yeah.
the buyers agents, they can't touch listings, so they never learn that process,
Right.
right? They never learn how to do that. So then when it comes time to think about maybe doing their own thing, right? They're like, I don't know enough. I haven't
Yeah.
gotten that experience.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're doing things totally differently, and you're really setting your agents up not only for success with your own team, but if they eventually wanted to go out on their own, that they would have the knowledge and skills to be able to potentially do that.
At the end of the day, their success is a team success. It's my
Yeah,
success,
yeah,
you know, and so, you know, it's not just always the buy and the sell part, you know,
hmm
as I guess a team leader, we also try to add value to giving them support. You know,
yeah,
if there's an agent that said, "Hey, do you know this listing agent? Like,
Hmm.
can you put in a good word for me?"
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I'm more than happy to do it
yeah,
because these days to get a deal done and accepted, it's not only what you know, but sometimes who you know.
yeah.
And so, you know, we'll call them up and say, "Hey,
hmm
how you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Remember last time, we did a deal and it went pretty well.
Yeah, yeah,
We want to do it again,
yeah, yeah.
and then, I'll get a little background information on the client,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
let them know that, if they're solid or not so solid. We try to be transparent,
Yeah,
you know,
that's usually valuable.
at the end of the day. Yeah. If you're telling somebody something that's not really accurate,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
word gets out and it catches up to you real quick. And, the reputation that you tried to build
Yes,
can,
yes.
can be tarnished so quickly.
Yes.
So,
Is there anything you would change about the real estate industry if you had a magic wand and you could just change something about real estate and the industry itself? Is there anything that comes to mind?
gosh, that's a broad brush. But I think half of the issues that we deal with on a daily, it's mostly the personalities that we deal with.
Hmm.
Um, and you wish that there was, maybe it was harder to get a license, because I
Okay.
think there's some agents that maybe have a license but don't really know what they're doing with it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Or there should be, more guidance up
Mm-hmm.
front
Mm-hmm.
as to, what the etiquette is and the ethics and the principles are
Sure.
that really matter.
Definitely.
Because I feel like, when we're trying to do everything above board
Mm-hmm.
and there's guys that are not doing that,
Right.
it just feels like, well, we still don't want to, stoop to their level,
Right.
but it makes the playing field a little bit uneven.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it gives, I think, consumers a really bad impression and perception of real estate
absolutely.
agents. You have one bad real estate agent,
Yeah,
it tarnishes all of our images,
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think it probably gets to the heart of this whole settlement and the lawsuits that we've got, like
I think so.
I'm
Yeah,
not sure those would have existed and that people would have gone that far to try and blow up the real estate industry and the monopoly that NAR has if there wasn't that perception that there's not value in what real estate agents do,
absolutely.
you know?
Yeah.
So what can we do to change that as real estate agents in the industry? How do we change the perception of consumers?
That's tough. Unless there's strict guidelines on how things should be done, and even if there were, not everybody feels like they should stay within the lines.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's like any profession, any industry. Not all realtors are created equal, just like not all
Sure.
lawyers and doctors are.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're gonna have some people that kind of set themselves apart with the quality of service and how they interact with people,
Yeah.
and just trying to do the right thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've clearly done a heck of a job with that. So I think you are obviously doing something different than other people are doing. It's your hard work ethic, but it's also what you're doing to how you're treating your clients because they keep coming back to you, right? They keep
Yeah.
referring business to you. What is it about your approach that is different maybe than other agents out there? What makes Peter Liu and your team different in how you're handling the clients that you have and your past clients?
I don't really know if what we're doing is hugely different from everybody else.
Okay.
The only I can only speak for myself, and my wife will verify this, that I'm a horrible liar.
Okay.
And so when we're kind of walking people through the process, I just shoot them straight.
Yeah.
I feel like an educated client is a client that can make their own decisions.
Sure.
And all we are doing is to give them guidance, to let them know what options they have and what
Yeah.
pitfalls could come up, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and then the hope is that they don't have any surprises.
Hmm.
And then something happens and they're like, oh, we talked about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for letting me know. We're ready.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and so it's just preparing the client.
Mm-hmm.
I think some agents pride themselves on saying, I only showed this guy 5 houses,
Mm.
and we're under contract.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they ask me, how many houses do I normally show? And I don't know if I should say this, but it's usually like 30 houses plus.
Wow.
And I'll have some clients that are looking for. I had one client look for like 4.5 years.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Wow.
and
That's crazy.
they were off and on.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
started at. They'll know who they are too when I'm telling this story. Um, so they started. I think I met them at a house that was like 275,000,
Okay.
and then 4.5 years later, they bought a house for 1.7.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right. So a lot changed for them in those 4.5
So
years.
so yeah, they were upwardly mobile,
Uh
and
huh.
it worked out well. And I told them,
Yeah.
like, they felt so bad. They're like, every time the mom saw me, she's like, "Oh God, I'm so embarrassed to see you. I feel so
That's funny.
bad."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to wait another 4 years and buy a $3.5 million house,
Yeah.
I'm
It'll be
okay
worth your
with that.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
So yeah, it's I think, you put the work into it. You make sure that the clients have gone through the process so that
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
been prepped.
Right.
And the biggest fear is you get them under contract, and then every single new house that comes on the market, they're saying, is that house better than
Oh
the
yeah.
house we have under contract?
Yeah.
And
Right.
they're not moving forward on sure
Mm-hmm.
footing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I started to think, I don't know if you're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see a few more. And usually, like, I can tell, like, if they walk into a house and you're reading their eyes and they're like,
Yep.
oh, this is this, then
Right. Right.
like, oh, this might be the one.
Yes.
you know
Yes. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if they're like kind of nonchalant about it, then I'm
Yeah.
like, don't give an offer that you're going to feel is overpaying.
Sure.
Give an offer that makes sense. If you don't get it,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get it out of your system.
Well, that's integrity, right? That's not trying to push your clients to do something just for the paycheck.
Right.
And I think when you are genuinely like that, and that's how you're treating people, they notice that. And
Yeah.
that's an easy thing to kind of like feel and understand and appreciate.
Yeah.
And that maybe that's unique in our industry. I don't know. And maybe that's what people are so attracted to you for is,
Maybe.
yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know. How hard is it to stick with that strategy? Now, I know it's part of who you are, so it's probably not that difficult, but still a good question. How
Yeah.
hard is it to stick with that when the market is challenging, like this last year? A lot
Yeah.
of agents really struggled, did less transactions. I'm sure you guys were probably in the same boat. Maybe not. But
No, it was affected. Yeah.
so the temptation is, you have clients, you want to get them in a house because you need to close transactions because you've got bills to pay and you've
Yeah.
got mouths to feed.
Yeah.
So what is it challenging for you to stick with that strategy, and how do you not give into that temptation?
I think for me, it's not that hard because it is my personality.
Yeah.
I do have buyer's agents that we've had come and go that, felt like they were really pushing it,
Mhm.
and they were getting things done quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you might not get those clients coming back,
Yeah,
the next time they want to buy or sell a house because you've already burned that bridge,
definitely.
People have to, we say go to sleep holding their pillow smiling when they have their new house,
Yeah, yeah.
and not have, any angst.
Yeah, doubts
Yeah.
about, like you said, like having made the right decision.
Yeah, because it's a
Mhm.
major investment.
Yeah, I know some agents get nervous. They want to turn that search off right away afterwards, after they close, their clients
Yeah.
are under contract because
Yeah.
they don't want them to see something that was better. But if you did the process right, you shouldn't be worried about that, right?
Right,
You know
right.
that they found the right house for them and that you were patient with them during the process.
If you did the process right, your clients should be calling you, hey, I think you forgot to shut off your
Yes,
search.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Or they're forwarding the search to their friends and their family saying,
Yeah.
hey,
There you
move
go.
in my neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about where you think the market is going. There's a lot of uncertainty right now
Sure.
with all of the lawsuits, but also the market itself. It's a very different place now after COVID.
Yeah.
Buyers are looking at houses in a different way. There's less inventory on the market. I mean, there's a whole lot that has been shifting and changing. What does your glass magic ball tell you over the next couple of years here, what we're going to see?
So, touching on that, if I really would have known, I would have borrowed a bunch of money 2 years ago, bought everything leveraged, and then sold everything, right?
Yeah.
Because we did not expect the market to continue to go up these last 2 years.
Right.
I had a client that was a economics professor at WashU, and he was building a new house, and he was telling me, this was right before COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and he was telling me, it'll eventually, have to, all the pegs are in place for a recession to hit.
Yeah.
This was 2000.
Wow.
And, it didn't slow down. It didn't stop.
Right.
But now I think that the difference is, everybody's like, oh, interest rates are high. It should
Mm-hmm.
come down eventually. But,
Mm-hmm.
we also had, all that money printed,
Sure.
and
Yes.
inflation is a big issue that I
Mm-hmm.
think is going to offset the potential decline that we were supposed to have
Mm.
cyclically.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so, I think for folks that think the market's going to start coming down,
Mm-hmm.
it might not come down as much as we originally had hoped.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know last year we do property management and leasing as
Oh,
well.
you do? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
How many rooftops do you have under management? That's always a big question as well.
I think we have 80 something doors right now.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
great.
it's enough to keep a full time property manager and leasing agent in
Yeah,
place.
I'm
Yeah,
sure you've sold a lot of homes to a lot of investors over the years, so it makes sense that if that's something that's in your wheelhouse to do. Yeah.
we did not market it or advertise it.
Mm-hmm.
We actually said, I wasn't planning on doing it, but
Yeah.
then people would just leave
Mm-hmm.
town and say, "Hey, I want you to manage our house and
Yeah.
lease it." And I'm like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
why not?"
Yeah. Then you realize there's a business in it, different
Right. So
revenue line for you.
everything we do kind of grew organically,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't really ask for it, but we're
Mm.
like, "Why not? Why
Sure.
not?" Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do think that, eventually. So what I was saying was, last year we did a house over in Lake St. Louis. We looked at all the comps. It said 2,000 was probably the most we could lease for.
Mm-hmm.
We put it out for 2,200. Last year, a lot of people were selling their house at the peak of the market, which was they thought was,
Right.
best for them.
Yeah.
And they were thinking, okay, we'll lease for a year. We'll slowly look for our next house. We'll
Mm-hmm.
cash out now while we
Mm-hmm.
can.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had three people say, hey, I know you're only asking for 2,000 or 2,200. Can we
Mm-hmm.
pay you 2,600? Because we've already sold our house and we're going to be homeless.
Oh wow.
And so the
Huh.
landlord was very happy. He's like,
Yeah.
"You're freaking amazing." And I'm like, I don't know if I could freaking do this every time, um,
Yes, I am, but
yeah.
okay, all right, cool. So, so looking forward, do you think that that people in 2 years are going to look back and be like, "Man, I wish I'd bought back then"? You think prices will continue to go up here over the next couple of years?
It might. I don't think it's going to continue to, accelerate at the same pace or
Okay.
appreciate at the same pace.
Sure. Well, I mean, God, we had historic appreciation, at least in St. Louis,
Yeah.
over the last couple of years here. 15% per year is like unheard of. It's usually
Yeah.
3-4% in St.
Right.
Louis.
Especially in the Midwest.
Yeah.
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 That's like a East or West Coast
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly. I mean, I always used to use the line like, hey, St. Louis is a great place to invest because we just have steady, easy appreciation, right?
Right.
It's never going to be 10 or 15%, and it's never going to go down by 10 or 15%.
Right.
Well, now we've seen it go up, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's going down a ton.
I don't see it going down, but
Yeah.
we'll see. Yeah.
You've got a lot of years in the business, so I think what you say has a lot more weight than just some pundit on TV. Like you've seen the markets go up and down before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about St. Louis a little bit.
Sure.
So a little bit of fun, right? So you've got two kids. You got a daughter who just won the Junior Honor Society, something like that.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. I was pretty proud of her.
Takes
Yeah.
after her old man, I guess.
That's what I was thinking. And then all my friends are like, she gets it after her mom.
Yes,
Nobody
of
gives
course.
me any credit for anything.
Right. And you've got a son.
I do.
And how old is your son?
He is 12.
12 years
Yeah.
old. Okay, that's a fun age. Our son is 11 years old
Aha.
and very, very busy with all kinds of sports, music, everything under the sun. So
Yes.
how in the world do you manage? I said we were going to talk about St. Louis. We'll get back to that because I have another better question. So how do you manage the family aspect and being a good dad, especially someone with such high energy like I know you have and passion for your business?
Yeah.
How do you turn that off and focus on your family?
So now I take Sundays off. If I have any showings, I'll have one of my showing agents show it for me.
Mm-hmm.
I may still be on the phone a lot if we have to negotiate a deal. But I try to be present, and then Monday through Saturday, I'm busy,
Yeah.
and usually what happens is my wife does most of the Ubering for these kids.
Mm-hmm.
We keep them in tennis like 5 or 6 times a week.
Wow.
The only other thing I ask is if you guys want to do that, you still have to go to Mathnasium.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that's a plug in any way and they want to give me a discount, that's fine. But it's there's definitely a work balance that you try to achieve. I don't know if you'll ever feel like it's perfect. I come from a family that my dad is still kind of a workaholic.
Okay.
Even though he's sold the business, he's still, flipping houses on the side.
Huh, interesting.
And I feel like, my parents weren't around too much because they were always busy, but they're first generation immigrants, so it was kind of expected.
Okay.
I got raised most of the time by my grandma.
Really?
Who, yeah, sweet lady, but also very strict.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember she disciplined me one time, and I was pretty young.
Okay.
And my dad came home, and I ran up to him thinking, hey, I was crying, and I'm like, Dad, Grandma just whooped me, and he paused, and he just laughed in my face. And he said, yeah, he's like, well, you're lucky because she's a lot slower now than she was when I was younger, and I'm like, oh, crap, like I'm preaching to the wrong guy.
Yeah.
But, I think it kind of taught me, she was very competitive too.
Okay.
And she always said to never stop learning. She was, I think, in her late 80s and still going to adult English school.
Wow.
And we knew that her English wasn't getting any better, but it was something for her to do.
Yeah.
And she was happy that she was continuing to, get an education no matter what.
Okay.
So I think those ideals were instilled in me early on to just, never feel like, you know everything.
Sure.
Because there's always more to learn and experience.
Yeah, 100%. What do you like to do with the kids on Sundays? Are there any like fun places that you like to go to around St. Louis, or that they like to go to?
At 14 and 12, Dad isn't as cool anymore. My daughter is on her phone with her friends all the time, and my son, he'll still hang out with me. Like I'm a big foodie, and so like we'll look for places to go eat.
Okay.
And I feel like that's good family quality time because no matter what they're doing, they'll get hungry eventually.
Right. Yeah.
And they'll have to drop what they're doing to eat.
Sure.
And so we try to eat together. Weekday dinners don't always happen because there's always like after school activities and stuff.
Sure.
But, and I like to cook too.
Yeah, okay.
And not everything turns out well, but
do you have a favorite dish? Is there like a Peterloo specialty meal that you prepare?
Not really. A lot of times when we cook, it's kind of like the TV program Chopped, where my wife will buy groceries and then she doesn't really have any like plan for what she's getting.
Okay.
And so I'll open the fridge and I'm like, okay, we have half of that, some of this, and we'll try to, mix it all together.
Just figure something out. Yeah.
Actually Google is kind of interesting because if you put 3 ingredients into Google, they'll give you a recipe. And you're like,
really?
Oh,
I've never
that
tried
makes sense.
That.
You should try it.
That sounds pretty cool.
Especially if you don't know what you have in your fridge.
Yeah. That's awesome. It sounds so. Your method here reminds me a lot of a dish that we ate growing up, and it was concocted exactly that way. It was all that was left in the house was spaghetti, cream corn, tomato paste, and hot dogs. So my parents put them all together and they called it Wiener Maserati. That's what it was called, right? This disgusting concoction that nobody but the Greyers liked. I fed it to my family once and they were like, no, Derek, we're never eating that again. Wiener Maserati.
So we had a grocery store too.
Okay.
And so, what's funny is people would think, oh, if you have a grocery store, you get to eat all the good food. That is not the case.
It's probably the opposite,
it's
right?
It's the opposite. Yeah. So it's everything that you see that it's about to expire.
That nobody else bought.
Right. Or like if an apple's bruised on one side and, it's still good,
Sure.
So you cut half of the apple off and that's what I grew up eating, And so like we had a lobster tank and the live lobsters I couldn't touch.
Yeah.
But if they died, that's coming
Game
out.
on.
We
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
sell that one, right? So, um,
Well, that'll make you creative with your cooking.
yeah,
Make you figure stuff out. That's awesome.
yeah.
What about favorite family getaways? If you're going to take the family and you're going to go somewhere, maybe in Missouri or close by, what are you doing? Where are you going?
Oh gosh. Well, with the family, we have lots of friends. I went to U of I in
Okay.
Champaign-Urbana, so we
Oh,
have
great.
lots of friends in Chicago.
Okay.
So that's probably like the closest place to go to. But
Yeah.
um, the kids like beach areas.
Okay.
I'm not a great swimmer, but
Okay.
and I don't tan well. But
Me neither. I'm with you there.
but it's good quality time.
Yeah. Where do you go? Destin? Or do you go somewhere
Destin's
else?
good.
Okay.
Destin's good. They have good deep sea fishing too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
You like doing fishing?
I do.
Yeah.
I like the idea of fishing.
Yeah.
I come home empty-handed sometimes.
Really? Oh,
There
man.
used to be a seafood city close to my house. And
Okay.
they've closed.
Ah.
So if I didn't catch anything, I would stop by there and pick something up, so I didn't look like
you got
a
something.
big loser.
That's so funny.
But I would be like, "Is that saltwater? I don't care.
Mhm.
Just the kids don't know."
Dad, you got a big haul this year.
Yeah.
When you did that. Yeah. Have you ever been fishing in Canada?
No.
I highly recommend it. So I took a trip a few years ago with some legislator buddies,
Okay.
and we drove up 18 hours to Canada, and it was on this like secluded lake, and it was the best fishing of my life.
Really?
Like, walleye and just incredible fishing. You just throw
You
your
have
line
to share
in
the
and
lake
you're-
with me.
Yeah. It's like one of these national park lakes. There was actually a pack of wolves. It was like around where we were in these cabins, so it was very, very cool. Yeah. Anyways,
The pack of wolves part kind of concerns me.
yeah,
but-
with the kids especially. Yeah, maybe not kid friendly, but they actually stay away. They're not too interested in you.
Well, that's where you say, I don't have to run faster than everybody. I just have to run faster than the kids.
Oh man, you kick your kids to the wolves. Terrible, Peter.
Oh,
Terrible.
no, it's funny. I don't care who you are.
Oh man. So do you have any big goals for this is the last question I'm gonna ask you, I promise.
Yeah.
Do you have any big goals for the next 1 year and the next 5 years?
So, for the next 1 year, I think we're just going to try to write out the year because it seems like this year is going to be tough, especially, on the buy side. Obviously, it's hard to win, contracts and bids. But on the sales side, as a listing agent, it also seems very tough because it seems like people are trying to tie up a property by giving their highest offer. And then they're trying to renegotiate with you again to try to get it all back.
Right.
Maybe every year is going to be a different, headache. I think for me, I'm kind of at the point where I would love to grow the business, but I don't want to grow it and have an empty shell where, we grow too fast. And this has always been my philosophy. It should be kind of organic, and you should have substance behind the growth.
Sure.
So I think for the next 5 years, if we can get a few more agents that are interested in joining the team and have the same values and the culture, I think definitely we're all for it. I might, in 5 years, I'm going to be 51. So, maybe I'll slow down, smell some roses on the way.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I love it. Well, congratulations on building such a successful career. And good luck to you as we move forward here. Look forward to staying in touch. So thank you for being on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.